Reforms we are implementing now will make our police department more effective, transparent, provide new services to our residents, and help strengthen the trust between our community and the department. I'm confident that these reforms will not only make our police department better, these reforms will make our police department a national example of positive, consensus-based reform. Our community and our nation have grappled for the last several decades with inexcusable instances of police brutality against minorities, and we are working to ensure that our police department respects the dignity and reflects the values of every single member of our community. I believe that a group of concerned citizens can make change. I also believe that an engaged government can implement that change in a positive way. I believe our police reform work group has identified ways to help us protect the rights of our citizens, and I believe our police department wants to adopt any reform it can to prevent senseless and tragic loss of life. I want to once again thank all the members of this work group for their hard work over these past few months. I especially want to thank our co-chairs, Judge Maureen Lamazny, who is with us virtually today, Delegate Alonzo Washington, and I want to thank the other members of the group. They represented a diverse set of voices with backgrounds in a number of relevant fields. Those fields included law enforcement, criminal justice reform, and civil rights. I am so proud of the Police Reform Work Group's thorough report. It is a very thorough report. And again, I want to thank all the members of that Police Reform Work Group and the many members of our community who were a part of this critical effort during this unprecedented time. Our Police Reform Work Group has identified, and they had a lot of work for me to do. So they have identified 50 reforms that would change the way our police force operates across 5 recommendation areas. Those include community engagement, employee recruitment and retention, financial management, independent oversight, compliance and integrity, and internal policies and regulation. Of those 50 proposed reforms, we are adopting 46 of them, 11 with amendments, and 35 we have adopted outright in their current form. We are making major changes to reform the way our law enforcement engages with the community. First of all, we are going to continue to help dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline by realigning our Prince George's County Public School security protocols, restructuring our school resource officers, updating school safety training requirements, and by investing in prevention and intervention programs for our students. Through this reform, we hope to prevent students from falling into school-to-prison pipeline that can rob a child of their opportunity before they even graduate from high school. In addition, we're overhauling the crisis response system, and this is so significant of the reforms. This is a really, all of them are significant, but this one I believe also is very significant, that we are overhauling the crisis response system to include new training, a mobile crisis team, and a county mental health crisis facility that will help our residents who suffer from mental health crises instead of punishing them. This will help our community keep residents with mental illnesses out of our jails and instead provide them the opportunity to get the help they need when they need it most, and we will do this with the most dignity. We are changing the way our Community Services Division interacts with the community. We will have a non-sworn Community Services Division Director who will report directly to the Chief of Police and oversee community engagement with our police department. We're moving the existing Community Services Division to the Police Department's Barlow Road facility, which will make space for larger community events, increase the reach, impact, and resources available to our Community Services Division. Employee recruitment and retention. We have accepted all of the proposed changes that the Police Reform Work Group proposed to update our employee recruitment and retention efforts. Taken together, these reforms will help ensure we hire well-qualified, highly trained, diverse officers that have a big incentive to live in the communities where they work. Along with these changes, we will invest in our police officers' mental health with annual evaluations, an officer wellness program, and other programs intended to shine a light on the importance of mental health for our police force. We know that officers who have the right to ask for help when they need it better serve their communities and have more fulfilling careers as a result. We want to give our police officers every opportunity to succeed as they continue to protect and serve Prince George's County. We're working to reimagine under the area of financial management. We're working to reimagine the Prince George's County Police Department budget in a way that helps to deliver the quality and nature of policing that our community deserves. At the outset, I want to make it clear that PGPD does not procure, because I've heard this so many times and it's worth addressing, PGPD does not procure surplus military equipment, and they will not procure military equipment going forward. We will continue to review the cost of policing and increase public access to the police budgeting process. And we are committing our police department to transparency on payouts, lawsuits, settlements, and fines. We will create this transparency through an annual financial audit of all PGPD-related payouts. Independent oversight, compliance, and integrity. We are also excited to establish the Office of Integrity and Compliance. This is Delegate Washington's favorite recommendation, and I'm sure he's going to say something about that when he's here. Our Inspector General's office will also be moved out of the police station. Instead, he will report to our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Public Safety and Homeland Security. We are also establishing a more robust and equitable citizen complaint oversight panel that will have a greater impact on the conduct of our department. At the same time, we will also acquire certification from the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. CALEA and this is, so you know, the gold standard in public safety certification for community-oriented policing. Internal policies. The reforms we're making to internal police department policies are among the most important. We will create additional transparency around traffic stops and subsequent actions taken by our officers. This data will be publicly available on the police department's dashboard and will include information regarding all no-knock and nighttime search warrants, use of flashbangs, and other police actions. We will also continue outfitting more officers with body-worn cameras to document police-citizen interactions to uphold police accountability. Every officer within our Bureau of Patrol was outfitted by the end of last year, but we will continue to expand our program. All of the data that we collect through these changes will be made publicly available online. This level of transparency by a police department, you should know, is absolutely unprecedented, and it puts Prince George's County at the very front of a national movement for accountability. We are also establishing a customer service campaign intended to make our police department more accessible. This will include business cards for our officers who can provide them to residents who request their information. We're also updating the PGPD use of force policy and the general orders to help ensure that our officers do not use force in a way that creates an unnecessary hazard to our residents. This will include a duty to intervene policy, where if an officer sees an illegal use of force occurring, he has a duty to stop that use of force. We're bringing transformative change to our police department. Through the same open process that created these recommendations, you should know that we look forward to implementing them and making Prince George's County's police department a model for the nation. I want to thank every resident of Prince George's County who has paid attention to this reform process. This past year showed us all that our voices are powerful when we use them together. I hope that today all of you feel heard. Thank you. I also want to, before we move ahead, okay, I'll hand it back to Gina Ford.
All right, and so next we will hear from our interim Chief of Police, Hector Velez.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to start by thanking the County Executive, Angela Alsobrooks, for her leadership in establishing the Police Reform Work Group. I also want to thank Delegate Alonzo Washington and Judge Maureen LeMancy for chairing and co-chairing the work group. And I also want to thank the work group members for sacrificing their time, spending time away from their families so that they can look at our operations and lend their expertise. As stated at the beginning of this process, I am committed to this process. I'm committed to the reforms, the recommendations that have been put forward, and I feel that this is a critical step in ensuring that relations between Prince George's County Police Department and the community are strengthened. Having had the opportunity to review the recommendations, there are a couple that I want to talk about that focus on education and community-oriented policing. Late last year, the Prince George's County Police Department applied for and was accepted into Georgetown Law's ABLE program, and ABLE stands for Active Bystandership of Law Enforcement. And essentially, this is a program that is built upon EPIC. And EPIC is a program that we already teach at the Academy, and that is Ethical Policing is Courageous. That program is a scenario-based program that teaches officers skills and principles for intervening when they see another officer that is engaging in misconduct or about to make a mistake. The difference with the ABLE program is that sits on top of the EPIC program. The ABLE program requires the police department to establish a culture of bystandership on the agency, and that is done by training the officers and having them made aware of their responsibilities to engage in the bystandership should they observe someone that is engaging in activity that they should not be engaging in. This month, 4 officers from the Training and Education Division will receive the Train the Trainer program. They will then return to the county and they will start training our officers through in-service training on the ABLE concepts, and then that will be extended to our officers in the Recruit Academy classes. Part of the requirement is also that we pay it forward. So having our officers attend the ABLE Train the Trainer program, that means we can pull municipal police officers in as well and put them through the training. And that was one of the things that was talked in the recommendations about coordinating training with municipal police agencies. So continue with training. In addition to current practices, we will begin providing quarterly training related to topics such as use of force, pursuits, legal updates, and lastly, but most importantly, reemphasizing issues and policies related to bias-based policing. Any officer that engages in bias-based policing will be held accountable. Lastly, in the near future, all recruit classes will receive a history class on policing. And I'm not talking about Boston was the first police department and then moving forward. I'm talking about the complex historical relationship between law enforcement and communities of color. A lot of these officers come into the academy and they have no idea what has transpired before them, and I think it's very important that they have that education. Concerning community-oriented policing, I'm a firm believer that all officers should be a COPS officer. And so what I want to do is change the culture in the agency so that becomes part of the Prince George's County Police Department. And the way we'll do that is when the recruits come into the academy class, they will be required to collectively decide on a project, a community outreach project, that they will work throughout the academy and then conclude prior to their graduation. When they graduate from the academy and they start their field training period, they will then be required to serve 1 week with a COPS officer at the district they're assigned to. And then we will also continue with the in-service training for our regular officers. Regarding our Community Services Division, Madam County Executive has already touched on that. So what I will do is I will close out by saying, as the interim Chief of Police, I'm committed to moving this agency forward. I believe that these recommendations will lead to greater transparency and ultimately improve police-community relations. And finally, I want to acknowledge the men and women of the Prince George's County Police Department. They have faced unprecedented challenges, yet their commitment to the community, their commitment to service, not once wavered. And I want them to know that their sacrifices are acknowledged. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Interim Chief. And so now we will have the video message from Co-Chair Judge Maureen Lamazny.
Good day. I would like to begin my brief remarks by thanking our amazing County Executive, Angela Alsobrooks. She designed the Police Reform Task Force to include as many diverse voices as possible, from high-level county officials to community advocates, from lawyers to law enforcement, and from the young to the not-so-young. The task force members did have several things in common: a work ethic that would not quit, and a determination to make a positive difference in our community. The staff Ms. Alsobrooks assigned to the task force were incredible. They kept us on track and online in the most professional and pleasant way. Her choice of Delegate Washington as co-chair was absolutely inspired. His energy, organizational skills, and knowledge of the subject matter was phenomenal. And of course, I thank her for naming me as his co-chair. It was an honor and a privilege to be part of this process. I also thank the Prince George's County Police Department. The members of the department who spoke to the task force were professional and cooperative. They were willing to listen and discuss the recommendations. I hope that their work environment is enhanced by these recommendations. The task force heard from the community through 2 listening sessions held at our first meeting on July 13th and our last meeting on November 5th before our voting sessions. In between, we held 11 full-body meetings with 32 presenters. Our 5 subcommittees met at least weekly, frequently with additional presenters to develop their recommendations. We held 3 voting sessions. In the end, we agreed upon 50 recommendations to forward to Ms. Alsobrooks that ranged from a business card policy to departmental reorganization. These recommendations were designed to accomplish our mission of establishing fair practices across the board, maximizing transparency, and restoring public trust in law enforcement. I am very gratified to learn that 35 recommendations were accepted by Ms. Alsobrooks as written, 11 were amended, and the amendments, I believe, make those recommendations better and stronger. Delegate Washington is with you to discuss them. I know Ms. Alsobrooks will implement the recommendations appropriately and as expeditiously as possible. I believe that we are well on our way to a more positive police-community relationship that will include transparency and mutual trust and respect. I thank you again for allowing me to be part of this consequential task force. Thank you.
Okay, and of course, we certainly do thank Judge Lamazny for her service on this work group. So that leads me to our next co-chair. I'd like to welcome Delegate Alonzo Washington.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Alonzo Washington, co-chair of the Prince George's County Police Reform Task Force, and I so happen to be a state delegate representing District 22 here in Prince George's. I want to thank our magnificent County Executive Angela Alsobrooks for appointing me to serve as co-chair of this work group. It's truly been an honor, and I really do appreciate it. I want to thank you more importantly for answering the calls for systemic police reform by creating this work group. Thank you for that. I am proud that today our county executive kept her promise of reviewing our 106-page report, and even more importantly, kept her promise to move swiftly to accept and implement our recommendations. So thank you. Also want to just acknowledge and thank the members of the work group for their hard work and commitment of meeting so many different times on Zoom. I want to thank our subcommittee chairs, of which I begged to lead our work. Florence Felix Lawson, Dr. Chris Marsh, Glenna Ivy, Judy Danso, and my great friend in the House of Delegates, Juanica Fisher. Thank you especially to Co-Chair Judge Lamassney for her expertise and partnership. I also want to thank the Prince George's County Police Department, including my friend Hector Velez, the interim chief, and the county executive's awesome staff, including my good frat brothers sitting right here, Ryan Middleton. Over the course of nearly 6 months, the work group worked tirelessly. We held 17 public meetings, listened to over 30 presentations, held 2 county public listening sessions where over 550 community residents participated. And we spent countless hours researching and analyzing data and best practices and deliberating on proposed recommendations. We have a great police department and police officers. However, they are working within a historically flawed system. Following our research and analysis of the internal operations and procedures of PGPD, we found several issues facing the department, to include problems within hiring and recruitment, transparency on community complaints and community complaint process, high levels of misconduct and excessive use of force by officers, poor data collection procedures and data analysis, lack of internal and external oversight and accountability, and low to moderate trust between our police department and our community. Our recommendations are a direct response to the community's demand for systemic changes and these findings that I listed above. Our report, coupled with the county executive's commitment to implement these recommendations, represents a major first step in reimagining policing and implementing transformational changes to a department that has a history of internal challenges. Among the recommendations accepted, as the county executive mentioned earlier, I want to specifically highlight the importance of the Office of Integrity and Compliance, which will be led by an independent inspector general's office and with investigative staff, including the race and gender equity director. The new office will disentangle the current inspector general from the PGPD leadership by making way for more robust auditing and inspections of the department. The office will submit annual reports to the internal operations to the police department, to the county executive, the county council, and all of Prince George's County residents. It will be truly transparent. The county will be making significant steps, and I'm thankful for this, to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline in PGCPS and in our county by reducing the number of security personnel and removing their arrest powers. PGCPS has the highest number of arrests of students in the state of Maryland. By reducing the total number of school security personnel, PGCPS will save about $17 million a year, which we recommend that these funds be reallocated to interventions such as restorative practices, trauma-informed care, gang intervention and prevention, mental health services for students and teachers. Additionally, we found the police need significant upgrade in their data collection capacity. While PGPD keeps adequate data and crime statistics, there is no comprehensive system to track residents' complaints, traffic stop data, and other key metrics needed to drive innovative changes within the department. A new data collection portal accessible to the public will address this very need. I also want to mention that we made clear recommendations to the county council, Mr. Chair. No one's off the hook in these recommendations, including adopting a use of force law, completing a forensic review of the police department's budget to implement progressive policies, policing strategies, and making changes to improve the citizens' complaint oversight.
Day 7 week. During this challenging time, you have been the ones that maintained your professionalism, and you went out every day and made our streets safer as you served and protect the community that is Prince George's County. County Exec, when you came to this position and you were elected by the people of Prince George's County, little did you know that a storm was coming your way. Little did you know that you would have to deal with police reform at the magnitude that you had. But what we respect about you, County Exec Alsobrooks, is you never wavered. You never left the fight. You had a vision of what you wanted to see happen, and you appointed 2 outstanding chairs to lead that effort. And as a consequence, we are here today to take on those 46 recommendations of the 50 to support you. The county council stands with you. The county council supports you. And county executive, for every elected official in Prince George's County in this state, you show what it means to have vision. You show what it means to have courage. And like the delegate said, as you go back to Annapolis and you gave us some items from the reform committee that the council will take up, we are hopeful and optimistic with your leadership, Delegate Washington, that our leaders in Annapolis will do the right thing and help us reform and transform Prince George's County. With your help and the help of the county executive, we are well on our way. Chief Velez, I've watched you lead under these circumstances, and I only can say to you, you're the leader that this county police department needs at this time as you work to ensure the men and women under your leadership understands that you're not going to accept anything less than their professional best as you lead. County Exec, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, they were so marvelous. I stood there and stood for a moment. I want to just thank Ryan Middleton, who led this effort from our administration. Ryan did an outstanding job. He's just an exceptional person, and I couldn't think of a better person to have led us from the administration side. So thank you so much, Ryan, for the heart and the passion that you brought to this issue as well. And so I want to thank you, and once again, I want to thank our co-chairs, Delegate Washington, Judge Lamazny. I want to thank the chair of our council and thank our interim police chief, Velez, so much as well for all of your leadership. There are a few other people that I would like to acknowledge before we close out today and echo a couple of things that were said. First is to thank the men and women of the department who are exceptional in every way, who keep us safe and sound, who bring their best to this work. And both things are true, that we can continue to be excellent and we can work to become better. And both things must be true at the same time. I also want to thank the members of our community, and I won't go too long in saying this, but I love Prince Georgians. Absolutely nothing like Prince Georgians. Thank them as well for their engagement. They have been engaged with us in this work. When we called for individuals to work with us, to come and testify in front of this group, they didn't hesitate. But I just want to thank them as well. They are just, nothing better. And finally, I want to just to thank a few of the participants from the Community Engagement and Quality Services Subcommittee. I want to recognize Chair Florence Felix Lawson, subcommittee members Tara Jackson, Josephine Morning, and Pastor James Robinson. Employee Recruitment, Retention, Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee. I want to recognize the Chair, Dr. Chris Marsh, subcommittee members Dr. George Askew, Sonia Pruitt, Dwayne Preston, and Donnell Turner. From the Financial Management Subcommittee, I want to recognize the Chair, Judy Danzo, and the members Archie O'Neill, Crystal Oriata, and the Honorable Rodney Streeter for their work on some very complicated budgeting issues. From the Independent Oversight, Compliance, and Integrity Subcommittee, I want to recognize the Chair, the Honorable Juanica Fisher, and the members Bob Ross, Keith Lockridge, and Orlando Barnes for their creative solutions. From the Internal Policies and County Regulations Subcommittee, I want to recognize the Chair, Glenn Ivey, members Yamilet Gutierrez, Joseph Ruddy, and the Honorable Alexander Williams, Jr. for all their reforms. In addition to the committee members, I want to acknowledge the hard work of key support staff, including Sam Jackson, Dana Ashton, who is here, Jonathan Bender, Miriam Brewer, Raquel Brody, Denise Buckler, Donna Ingalls, Rhea Harris, Charmaine Harvin, Katina Rojas Joy, Tammy McGear, Pastor Charles McNeil, of course, Ryan Middleton, Sadia Noah Hope, Shaka Pack DeFlores, Paula Speeden, Valerie Watson, and Sergeant David Young. And over the past few months, a few dedicated interns also worked behind the scenes to make our reform effort happen. I want to recognize Jakayla Call, Quentin Harry, Matthew Hatchett, India Roebuck, and Bill Keys Stover for their efforts. And lastly, again, want to recognize the Prince George's County community for taking an interest in bettering our police department. And I know that through their involvement, we're going to get this right. So thank you all. And at this time, I'll take any questions you may have.
Executive, can you go over the four that were omitted from the list and a brief explanation of which ones were amended?
Okay, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask Ryan if he can come up and he will give you some more information about the four that we did not accept.
Ryan Middleton, the program manager.
Do you mind when you get up there, your name and your title for the mic?
For the record, my name is Ryan Middleton. I served as the project manager for the Prince George's County Police Reform Work Group. And you asked about the omitted recommendations? Sure.
Explanation for what was amended.
Sure. So for the first one, it was the original recommendation was increased funding for the diversion expansion programs through collaboration through PGPD and the State's Attorney's Office. We only omitted that one because we did not want to create programming redundancies with the Circuit Court's current diversion programs. The second one that was omitted asked us to review the current funding allocation for specialty units. That's still going to happen. It's just that the nature of that recommendation is going to be folded into the broader review of the county, of the police department's overall budget. The third one that was omitted was with regards to removing racial biases from the gang and criminal organization registry and updated policies and procedures. So the police department does not operate a gang database. The federal government operates that database through HIDA and controls all the entries. The police department currently does not know how many people are in that database, nor its racial makeup. The names on the database are expunged after 5 years of inactivity, so that also addresses the aspect of the recommendation that called for procedures to be in place to remove names that are found to be either inactive or irrelevant. And currently, only 3 people in the department have access to that database. The fourth and final omission was consider feasibility of traffic enforcement. That recommendation called for transferring the traffic enforcement from the police department to possibly over to the county's revenue authority. The reason why that one was omitted, given all the other recommendations that we're taking on here, tracking, reporting, and reporting traffic enforcement data is going to allow the Prince George's County government to properly assess the opportunities for policy changes, and pursuing such a crazy, not what I want to say crazy, excuse me, pursuing such a momentous shift in agency function would more than likely lead to mismanagement and unforeseen consequences. So it's not that that could never ever happen. It's just that as of right now, we're not keen on transferring traffic enforcement.
While you're up there, I have a question about GangNet. We did an in-depth report on GangNet, and while Prince George's County does not operate it, it cooperates with it. Since our report, we've had 2 major police agencies in Virginia stop cooperating with GangNet. The Virginia Gang Task Force has stopped cooperating, and also the Fairfax County Police Department. So can you explain, or someone talk a little bit about why Prince George's County is deciding to continue to cooperate with GangNet?
So as Ryan said, this is a database that is operated by the federal government, and we're going to continue to look at it. But the spirit of it is this: We don't operate the gang database, the federal government does. We don't control what information is put into it or taken out of it. And so that's the spirit of the recommendation, was to stop operating something that we don't have control of. So that was why we addressed it in the way we did. This doesn't say that we're not going to continue to look at this issue, and if we find that there are adjustments or amendments that we need to make, that we won't make them. But the spirit of the recommendation said, stop operating a database, and the answer was, we don't operate it, the federal government does. And again, we don't control what goes in that database, what comes out of the database, and so that's the reason that we answered the way we did.
What we found in our reporting is that the police department does control what goes in it, and that officers who are trained to submit information into the database can do that. But as I said, there are other agencies who have said, we're not going to submit any more information into this database. We're going to find another way to take care of how we deal with our gang issues.
Well, let's see if the chief has more he'd like to add.
Okay, so as far as entering information into the database, what our officers do, and I want to make it clear that this is not every officer that works the street. This pertains specifically to our gang unit officers who are trained at identifying tattoos. If they're in contact with somebody and they see a tattoo in the hand, they will get information as they do with anyone else that they stop, and then they forward that information to HIDA. HIDA looks at that information, and they determine whether or not that information meets the criteria that they have to enter it into a database. If it does, they enter it into a database. If it doesn't, then it doesn't go into the database. So that is our extent. We have 3 individuals on the agency that submit that information.
So, and my understanding is, that in the report, what they asked is that racial bias be taken out of the equation when adding names to the database.
So I think that's part of the issue, Tracy, is it's asking for something specific that the department doesn't control entering stuff into. So it's something that's still being looked at. That's not from the purview of that specific recommendation.
So do you support then, Chief, continuing work with the database?
At this point, until there's something else that proves otherwise. But right now, it is a useful tool that's used for investigations.
Well,
Thanks. Madam County Executive, quick question, real quick. Then I'll have one for Delegate Washington. Just quick update on the police chief search, especially when I heard Council Chair Hawkins give a big endorsement just now for the police chief.
So we do have a very talented interim police chief, and we are conducting a process that we hope to conclude in the next couple of weeks. So you will hear, so we hope to conclude the interviews. I promised the community that we would conduct a comprehensive process, and following through with my promise. So I am conducting, as I promised, a comprehensive process, and we'll come back with the results of it very soon.
I guess the hope is that whoever's chosen will accept the recommendations that have been passed. Is
Yes.
that the hope?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Delegate Washington, quick question, please. In regards to the, you mentioned about the $17 million saved. Could you expand upon that just a little bit? And and as you know, there's been discussion about school resource officers and what it looks like. Explain a little bit about that, could you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the Police Reform Work Group recommended that we do not remove the SROs from our school system. We believe there's a place for our officers to help build relations with our young people in our 28 high schools in the county. I believe it's about almost 30 if you include the other transitional schools. And what we did recommend was a significant reduction in school security personnel who arrests about 80%, who conducts about 80% of the arrests in Prince George's County Public School System. And Prince George's County Public Schools has created essentially a police department within the Prince George's County Public School System of over 260 school security personnel, of which some of them have arrest powers. 90 of them have arrest powers. And so, of which we recommended to significantly reduce that. If I can give an example, what we're saying here is that there's a recommendation here to make sure that we don't over police our students. but we provide protection and safety of our students and our teachers in our schools, and we can do that through a comprehensive plan set out by the school system. I must say that the Dr. Golson accepted all of our recommendations in reference to SROs and school security personnel, and the county executive has too. And so I'm very proud and happy about that, because I've been working on dismantling the school to prison pipeline since I became a delegate. So this means more to me than the county executive knows.
Delegate, can you just, what are your overall feelings about the recommendations here and what the county executive has accepted? What are your thoughts?
The county executive and I were on a call, and she asked me as she was going through her recommendations, Alonzo, why aren't you smiling? Now and today, Madam County Executive, I'm smiling. So, and I think this is a great step in the right direction for our county. This is just the very first step, and we have a long road to go. And the county executive is committed, and our interim chief is committed. And Prince Zitzen in front of the county council. The county council is committed, as well as the Maryland General Assembly, at least the Democrats.
Just one final clarification. Would some of that, sir, in terms of the protection for the schools, connect with the School to Safe Act?
I can't speak to the School to Safe Act right now. What I will say is that, again, the school system spends about $17 million on those 260 school security personnel, not including SROs, because they don't pay for the SROs. That comes out of the county or the municipal budgets. That money could be spent, those dollars we recommend to be reallocated to mental health for teachers and students, to ensuring that there's restorative practice to reduce the suspensions in our schools. So these are recommendations that are holistic and comprehensive.
Chief Velez, I have just a quick question.
And then we're going to close.
Based on the recommendations that were made, for years you oversaw IA, you've been in the department for a really long time. Are these recommendations that you wanted to see made when you were in those kinds of positions, or even now, or is there something that was in the way, or these things that you haven't thought about? What is your take on it?
So I can tell you this. When we looked at the recommendations, we sat down, Deputy Chief Lakina Webster led this group, and it was our Deputy Chiefs, the Assistant Chief, myself, and the FOP President. And when we looked at all these recommendations, we didn't have a problem. We said, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We're willing to do that. The thing about this is that the men and women of the Prince George's County Police Department will work on these recommendations, and they will get them done, and they will accept them. And that's not because I'm saying they will, but because that is their character. And we are always looking for ways that we can get better. And, to have such a talented group of individuals involved in this work group, lending their expertise, we're being able to see things through a different lens. And that is always something you want, is to have a different perspective. And so that's what we have, and we're pleased with it.
The county executive, I'm sorry, this is my last question. I just have to ask,
Oh, go ahead.
with that ongoing lawsuit that the county is still fighting and the millions that have been spent there, taking a look at these recommendations, is that going to play a part in coming to the table on that, or do you still see these as two separate issues? Because
Yeah, two separate issues. The
there are
one.
a lot of things in that lawsuit that this task force addressed. A lot of allegations that were made by officers that this task force agreed with. So where do you stand?
Yeah, they're two separate issues. One was filed in a courthouse, and we're going to let it be resolved in the courthouse. And then we have taken the additional step of spending time in earnest to look at our department and make recommendations and accept recommendations and implement the changes that we believe are necessary. But the two are completely separate from each other. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other. I've said over and over again that matter is a matter that has been taken up in the court of law. And I think that's where it should be resolved. And whatever the courts tell us, one way or the other needs to be done, we will do it. And in the meanwhile, we didn't wait. We are looking at ourselves, and we're going to make whatever changes are necessary. The thing I want to say, just kind of wrapping up here, is I do, again, want to thank every single individual involved in this effort. I'm very proud of it. And I can tell you, I have been, I'm a lifelong county resident. I don't think there's any person, any place at this time who is not interested in making sure we do the best we can every day for the people who live here. But this is what I'm proud of. It doesn't take as much talent to recognize a problem. Everybody can see the problem. I think we're at a point in our county, in our state, and in our country where the problems are well documented. They've been there for the whole world to see, but it takes a different type of person, a different group of people to do something about it. So I'm proud of our county. I'm proud of our department. And again, I think this makes this department a leader in the country, in that we're not simply, there are some places where they haven't even gotten to a point where they can acknowledge that there's an issue. I think it said something to the interim chief's point, that it takes a different sort of character to say, you know what, we recognize that there's still some work to do and that people are willing to do it. So I hope that the public will see that this is our earnest and sincere effort at doing the best we can. We never profess to be perfect in every regard, but we say, good grief, when we see a problem, we're going to call it out and we will work to address it. That's the reason 50 recommendations came to me, 46 of them after not just taking them and putting them someplace and saying, oh, great, I have read each and every recommendation, I have considered them, and we are going to do our level best to make sure that we are making sure that this department has the time and attention that it deserves, and that this community gets the sort of policing that it deserves as well. So again, I want to say thank you to everyone involved. Again, it's not so hard. It is not difficult to recognize an issue. It is a whole different matter to do something about it, and we're doing something about it. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.